Chapter 12, like seeing a ghost. Doorbell. Who could be coming here so late? I checked my phone, 10:40 p.m. I wasn't asleep, just doing everything I could to ignore Chris's text message begging me for details and trying not to text Lovey to see what the hell I did to blow the night. Doorbell again. Last time this happened, I got only bad news. Well, more bad news. I bopped down the stairs. At least this time I'm dressed. Who is it? I called when I reached the door. Mr. Ray? I felt like I was having deja vu. I opened the door, and there he was, holding what looked like two metal frisbees. I brought you some food in case you hadn't eaten, he said, coming in. Thanks, but I have, I told him. He didn't seem to hear me. At first, I thought it was a little strange that he had shown up so late. But he was always checking up ever since he declared he'd look after me. He'd look out for me after the Cork/Dad fiasco. So maybe this was just one of those times. He set the food on the table and unwrapped one of the plates. Colors and sauces all mixed up. Looked good, but I wasn't hungry. Even if I hadn't already eaten, I wouldn't have been hungry. Mr. Ray moved toward the living room, and I stood behind him watching as he held the food and limped. That's when it hit me. The newspaper clip in Mr. Ray's basement, the one separate from the rest. A crushed knee, a crushed dream. Martin Gandry. It was like Mr. Ray's offbeat stride turned the light on in my brain, and I can suddenly remember exactly who Candyman was and where I had heard that name. He was the guy who fell on Mr. Ray and ended his career all those years ago. Shoot, shoot, shoot. We both took a seat on the spaceship. So how was your date? He asked. Actually, pretty good until the end. I turned the TV on, now nervous. I wasn't sure if I could tell Mr. Ray about Candyman or not. I mean, I could, but what for? What good would it do? Mr. Ray lifted his eyebrows almost to his hairline. Oh, yeah? Yeah, everything was cool. The cookies worked. What'd I tell you? Told you, man. Chocolate chip always wins, he interrupted. Yeah, yeah. I think it had more to do with my baking skills, I boasted. Most of them went to the kids anyway. Mr. Ray looked as confused as I had when I heard about the kids. We went to the shelter, I explained, letting Mr. Ray off the hook. That's where we spent the day, and to be honest, it was pretty cool. Oh, okay, I've been meaning to volunteer there for years, but I never have time. Mr. Ray stabbed at his mac and cheese. I swallowed hard. If he volunteered there, he'd probably bump into Candyman, and who knows what would happen. Mr. Ray continued. So, what happened at the end of, was it still a date? I mean, shelters aren't exactly first choice date spots. It was still a date, I said short. Okay, well, what happened at the end that threw it off? I asked her about Valentine's Day, that's all. I punched the buttons on the remote, and she flipped on me. Oh, Mr. Ray moaned. What? You know what it is? Why Valentine's Day pisses her off? Mr. Ray took a fork full of everything and stuffed it into his mouth. You know, don't you? I asked urgently. Mr. Ray just chewed his food. Mr. Ray, are you going to tell me or what? He swallowed and said calmly, Matthew, I can't. It's not my place, and I need you to understand that. He took the remote and found the football game. I leaned back on the couch, frustrated. Yeah, I understood why Mr. Ray couldn't say what he knew. Loose lips sink ships, my mom used to say, and I went to school every day on the Titanic, so I got it. But still, I wanted to know. But I got myself together. What about you? How was your Thanksgiving? The score on the game was 0-0 fourth quarter, making this the most boring game ever. At least that's what it seemed like to me, and Mr. Ray apparently felt the same way because he turned the channel again. News. He looked at the TV screen as if it were the reporter who just asked him a question. He never looked at me. I had dinner in the basement, he finally said, his voice empty, and I suddenly knew why he really came over. It wasn't to check on me, at least not just to check on me. He just wanted to be around someone. He was just like Candyman, waiting on one more game of chess. I got it, and I knew I didn't need to comment on it. So we just sat there, swallowed by the giant burgundy couch, watching the news when suddenly I sat forward. Connie Whitlock came on the screen. Her head seemed larger than it did in real life. Good evening, folks. I'm Connie Whitlock, and today was a special day, not only for the people fortunate enough to break bread with family, but also for the less fortunate who today also got to share in a family meal. Thanks to the good people down here at Helping Hand Shelter. I slapped Mr. Ray on the arm. Hey, this is about the shelter. She interviewed me today. I'm about to be on this thing. Strange, even though I'm not the smoothest person when it comes to things like interview, I was super hyped to see myself on TV. Who wouldn't be? First, Lovey, who looked even better on screen, talked about the history of Helping Hand and about her grandmother, Gwendolyn Brown. She and Connie were walking around the shelter. They got some really cool footage of all the kids waiting in line to get their pictures taken, the massive pots and pans and trays for the food, and some of the other volunteers. And then I was up. I thought maybe I'd come and everyone would just be bummed out. I was hoping they'd edit that out, but they didn't. Bummed out, Mr. Ray shouted, heaving with laughter. He pounded his leg and threw his head back like old men do, cracking up. Man, oh man, if I was that dude sitting next to you, I'd have been pissed. Who, him? I pointed to the screen. Crazy thing is, he didn't even seem to catch it. I said, then I took a deep breath, looked away from the television, away from Mr. Ray, and said, the other crazy thing is that his name is Candyman. I tried to laugh it off and hope this didn't go bad. I'm not even sure why I said it, but it just seemed like the right thing to do. If Mr. Ray had mentioned him, I would have let it slide, but he gave me an opening, so I took it as a sign. Maybe Mr. Ray could find closure or something. I didn't know. Mr. Ray's cackling tapered off. Wait, what'd you say? He caught his breath. What's the guy's name? Him? I pointed to the guy who was sitting behind me on the screen again. They call that guy Candyman. Mr. Ray leaned into the TV to get a better look. He leaned so far, his butt was up off the couch. He studied the man for at least 10 seconds, while Connie Whitlock wrapped up the report. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Now back to you, Carla. Mr. Ray flopped back down on the couch, his face stricken like he had seen a ghost. I'll be damned, he muttered. Son of a bitch. Mr. Ray had a sick look on his face, as if the mac and cheese was spoiled and was suddenly tying his stomach in knots. He wiped his forehead, his eyes, and his mouth all in one motion, then said, Martin Gandry. I bit down hard on my bottom lip. I didn't want to tell you. Martin Candyman Gandry, he repeated again, ignoring me. Mr. Ray stared at the TV. The news had gone on to the next story. Fire in Bushwick. Fire in Mr. Ray. Fire in my mind. That's him, Mr. Ray. Mr. Ray turned back toward me, his eyes lost, his mouth frowning. That's him.